Hello, everybody. As you can see, I've got the tie on. We've got the Top Hollow music playing on in the background, which you all know what that means. It's time for some Pokemon Sleep news. Now, we've got the information now live about Blissey. I'm a bit late to the draw on this one compared to how I normally am. I'm usually the first person to report on it, and I know that's not the case this time around. But it's very, very interesting. Very interesting what's going on with Blissey, and I still wanted to report on it. Now, I actually was completely correct. I made a prediction some time ago in the Discord. I thought it was going to be our first Pokemon to not be or to be a skill to not be a skill specialist and have energy for everyone. And what do you know? That was 100% correct. I also predicted mono eggs, which also correct. These are, however, I think that part was a lot easier to predict. But it felt logical. It turned out to be that way. Now, what's going on with Blissey? It is an egg farmer. AAA is all eggs. It's got potatoes as well for the B ingredient, and the C ingredient is honey. Now, I like to evaluate synergies of ingredients, and a lot of other players won't talk about this because a lot of players are fixated on the mono ingredient meta, which mono ingredient list is always strong, but I like to consider other options if you happen to stumble into them. And what does Blissey offer? Well, an AAC Blissey can be kind of interesting if you have a nice Blastoise to pair with it, because as you can see here, eggs and honey are both in this top tier, or not top tier, but both in Flower Gift Macarons, which if you're good about supplementing and stockpiling ingredients, knowing what your lists are, then you could easily knock out this meal with just a Blastoise and a Chansey, and then some supplemented or stockpiled ingredients. Similar to how we've kind of talked about Dream Eater Butter Curry has always kind of been, being a mid-high tier meal that can be covered by just 2 Pokemon, or Inferno Corn Kima as well with Dragonite Tyranitar, Dragonite Charizard. Interesting combos that I think are some of the strongest cases for mixed ingredient lists. And we have a new example of advocating for potential mixed ingredient lists if you stumble into the right Pokemon. I'd still hunt it, just catch Blissey and be open to the idea of an AAC list if you have the right Blastoise to be paired with this. But overall, I think it's an interesting option, and a lot of other players won't talk about it, so I wanted to talk about it here. There's also the Fruity Flan, which also has those ingredients, but there isn't as nice of synergy with apples and milk to cover it in just 2 Pokemon. But apples is on a lot of berry specialists, and milk is on notably all the evolutions. So maybe this could also be an option, but it's a little bit weaker, so I wouldn't really recommend it if you can try to shoot for the Flower Gift Macarons, especially since this can be a 2 ingredient specialist combo now that Blissey is around. Anyway, as for potatoes, as another option, egg and potatoes really, they do have a shocking degree of meals that have egg and potatoes in them, but they all kind of suck. None of them are past. I usually draw a line right here, and I say if it's not past this line is kind of where my threshold is, then I don't really consider it at all for any teams unless I'm just running berry specialists all week, because nothing that I found down here is really worth running an ingredient specialist over. And yeah, this one only has 3 potatoes in it. Let's see that one. Let's get a zoom in. Yeah, singing Superpower Extreme Sound. There's 3 potatoes and 5 eggs. None of these are double digits ingredients. It takes 4 different ingredients. This is one of the hardest meals to make. Just on how many different ingredients it has, how much variety it takes, and yet it's not really that powerful. So I really wouldn't recommend it for looking for synergy with potatoes and eggs with the current state of the game, because the synergy just isn't there. But you can catch an ABB and get a few extra eggs on the side while also producing a decent amount of potatoes, because we make the comparison. Now, this is accounting for an 8.5-hour sleep session. Inventory is taken into account. Let's get that inventory subskill off of there, because that's not every situation. But this is if you just have an ingredient fighting M, help speed M, and sleep for 8.5 hours, as most people that play this game do. It doesn't really show up in terms of the ingredient producers, but if you look here, it's not that. It's a decent amount behind Quagsire, but these numbers are not all that far apart for these 3, and all 3 of these guys, I'd say, are viable potato farmers. So if you need a potato farmer, Chansey Blissey can work. Now, the reason why I say Chansey Blissey is because, interestingly enough, and also it is better for eggs, which is a shocking revelation. I was not expecting Delibird to be power crept by Blissey. I was expecting it to be a side grade option, that if you wanted to hunt the 16 pip option, the 16 pip option would be better. Kind of what they did with Cacao with Absol. As you can see, Absol does come in a little bit better for Cow. But when it comes to hunting for eggs, the 5-pip option is better now. This is not good for Delibird. It was already one of the hardest hunts in the game to catch a good one. There were already people that used a Boma Snow in favor of it. And just because the difference really isn't that much. Only about 10 eggs per day, according to this rough approximation here. So a lot of people were already favoring a Boma Snow because it was an easier hunt. And now there's something that's actually better than the Delibird. I feel so bad for the Santa Bird because this is... They need to buff it if they want to have people actually catching it who are metagaming it. But aside from that, what's really interesting about Blissey is that if we look at its stats compared to its pre-evolution, Chansey, it's got a slightly faster frequency by about... I heard the figures about... I think it was like 5 or 6%. Haven't done the math on that myself, but other people have talked about it. The bonuses that are gained by ribbons bring these two to a really, really close frequency where the difference is basically negligible with just a 500-hour ribbon. And at a 2,000-hour ribbon, Chansey actually becomes faster than Blissey because of the benefits from ribbons from being under-evolved. If we look at their ingredient and skill trigger rates, well, the skill trigger rate is exactly the same at 2.3%, and the ingredient rate may as well be the same. I mean, it's slightly better on Blissey, but it's not too much of a difference. So, why run Blissey? Well, realistically, with a 2,000-hour ribbon, Chansey is going to be better. Mathematically, if you're assuming perfect scenario where you're collecting every help. Now, if you are doing 8.5-hour sleep sessions and you are the type of person to sleep with your Pokemon, or sleep with your ingredient specialist, a lot of people rotate. So, rotating players that are very active, you're going to benefit more from a 2,000-hour Chansey. But even if we give the 2,000-hour ribbon to these Pokemon, in this circumstance, this is accounting for infinite inventory. Here you can actually see that difference there. If we get rid of that infinite inventory to be normal, and the 8.5-hour sleep session, I think I said earlier it was infinite. Apparently, or I said it was this. Then you can see that the Blissey is better. And if we give it inventory up L, if they theoretically had this sub-skill, the Blissey still comes in a little bit better because that inventory does hurt the Chansey. So, if you're the type of person that likes to sleep with the Pokemon and you don't rotate the teams all that often, even when sleeping with them, then realistically, Blissey's probably a better bet. Just because that extra inventory is pretty big. Unless it has a boatload of inventory. Let's say it doesn't have help speed M, and instead it has inventory up M. In that circumstance, Chansey does do better at 2,000 hours slept. So maybe it's worth consideration then. But realistically, I think most meta-use Chanseys are probably going to be looking like this comparison. If you sleep with them, and you take the 8.5 hours before collecting because the phone's put down. If you're a type of person that collects throughout the night, or you rotate the teams so that your ingredient specialists aren't on at night, then the Chansey is going to actually be better. Although if you're rotating the teams off at night, how is that Chansey going to build up the ribbon to actually reach the spot where it is better than the Blissey? Because at just 500 hours, before that point, Chansey is worse. Although it's so close that it's basically the same thing. It's only a little bit different. Personally, I'd say if you like to rotate the teams, it's worth it to go for the Chansey in general. Because it only takes 500 hours slept with to get that. That's only 350 hours more than the evolution requirement. So, if you only have to get it to 150 to evolve it, may as well take that extra 350 to make them comparable. And then you have the potential one day to keep sleeping with it, get the 2,000 hour ribbon, and have something that's actually better than Blissey. And a decent amount better, too. If we look back at the infinite inventory comparison to assume for perfect circumstance where you're swapping the team all the time, it's about, I guess 7 eggs a day isn't really that much, but it's significant enough that it's worth noting, and I think worth the effort for something that's long-term significantly better. But if you are someone who's having their inventory fill quite a bit and have inventory problems, if you like to sleep with your ingredient specialists and don't really rotate them, then I think the Blissey is a better option than Chansey. But this is one of the first circumstances that we've seen that they're fighting, an evolution is fighting with its pre-evolution for the same job. And they both, there's reasonable cases for both. It's not like with Onyx versus Steelix, where Onyx or Slacking versus Vigoroth, where they're doing different things. Steelix does Steel Berries, Onyx does Rock Berries. Slacking does skills, Vigoroth does berries. Those are the only circumstances where I'd say there were like cases for keeping them under evolved. This is a new case, but they're competing for the same role. Now, as for its energy for everyone capability, I wouldn't recommend it for this purpose. It is not an energy for everyone healer. As you can see here, the comparison comes out that it is worse than an Igglybuff. Both Chansey and Blissey, both, even with the 2,000-hour ribbon and everything like that. It's not good. It's not good for energy for everyone. If you want to do energy for everyone, go with an actual energy for everyone healer. However, I think something very significant to mention about it is that if you have a subpar healer, or now we have the advent of Cresselia, one of the biggest drawbacks to Cresselia is that, yes, it produces a ton of berry strength while also providing the healing. That's very, very powerful. But Cresselia's main skill is a decent amount weaker than the other main skills, or than the other energy for everyone healers for the purposes of healing specifically. If we make the comparison here, you can see that the energy for everyone at max level produces 18.1 energy. Meanwhile, Lunar Blessing, Cresselia's skill, only produces 11. That's 7 less. That's a big drop-off. But a good Cresselia can do okay at healing the team. You are losing a little bit of energy value, a little bit of the boost that's gained by extra energy. But if you have a Blissey in there that can proc just 1 time per day, which is kind of the numbers that we're seeing here, a little bit over 1 time per day, actually, then I think that supplemental healing, even if you just have it at skill level 3, making 9 extra energy, is a decent amount that, you know, if it's contributing via eggs and just does that energy on the side, that's really, really nice. And you can actually take advantage of that if you're the type of player that runs Cresselia. That's a very small minority of people, though. But I wanted to mention it. It is worth noting that maybe Blissey is something that you really should want if you use Cresselia, because I think that's a really nice synergy. And I'm hoping that they keep this up and they have more non-skill specialists that have energy for everyone. Because the biggest problem with running Cresselia plus another healer is that there are very small gains by having more energy than what Cresselia already provides if you have a good one. But having something that can produce a little bit of energy, but it's doing something else, and that's kind of like a side product, and you don't really care about it, but it's just happening as a passive. If it's contributing to the team in other ways, then as a dual core, that's very, very powerful. And if they were to give energy for everyone to a berry specialist, especially if it was a psychic berry specialist, I don't imagine that's going to happen. But if they were to do that, it would be insane. So I think this is very interesting for anybody who's running Cresselia teams. And I just wanted to make it a note to add here at the end of the video. But anyway, if you have enjoyed the news coverage, have enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I try to cover the news as fast and be one of the first people out there with a video. Down in the description, I'll have a link to join our Discord. Come join us, hang out, talk about all things Pokemon Sleep and the like. And I've also got the join button now. Feel free to click that. If you are financially capable of doing so and want to show your support to my channel in that way and are financially capable of doing so, I've got no real benefits for it, but it's just an option there if you want to show that support like that. And as always, I thank you all for watching and hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.